Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're reading Copper's Son by Sharon Draper, and we are now on Polly's parts, which is part 4. And the first chapter of that is chapter 21, Rice and Snakes. Polly was determined to get a position in the big house. The slave girl was adjusting. Teeny didn't really need her, and Polly was tired of working like a common slave. She waited for her opportunity, praying for a moment along with Mrs. Derby to ask for a more suitable position in her household. But Teeny kept her busy from dawn to dusk doing what Polly considered to be slave labor, peeling potatoes, shelling peas, shucking corn, and carrying heavy stacks of kindling for the fire. Lots of corn grew on the land, and Polly was consistently impressed by Teeny, who seemed to know thousands of things she could make from it. But Derbyshire Farms was actually a rice plantation. Rice was everywhere. Rice ruled. "Do you think Mr. Derby gets his wealth from the rice?" she asked Teeny one humid afternoon. "Lord, child, what you care about Master Derby's money? All I knows is every year Master Derby go to market and buy big, strong male slaves directly from Africa for to work in the rice fields," she explained. "I was surprised at first when he brought mine here, little bitty girl thing. She ain't no bigger than a rock-eating chicken. For sure she ain't strong enough to work the fields." She sighed. "But then I figured out the reason why. I'm sorry, child," she said to Amari. Amari simply shrugged. "Why he buy African men?" she asked Teeny. "All they know's the rice 'cause they working in their own country. They the brains of the whole project here. Master won't admit it, but he need them men to keep this place going. They is what's making him rich." Polly pondered this a moment, trying to find any opportunity to move from the kitchen to the house. Perhaps Mr. Derby could use an assistant to help him keep his books. I can read and cipher, you know," she added with a bit of pride. Teeny snorted. "Ain't much call for none of that round here. That's enough to talk about the master's money. I want y'all to head over to the rice fields and take this here water to the workers. Tote a little cornbread for 'em, too. Lord knows when they're going to get the time to eat or drink, though." She prepared a large wooden bucket for each girl to carry. Polly groaned inwardly as once again she was given what she considered to be slave duties. "What is the advantage of being white if I have to work like I'm a black every day?" she thought with consternation. "Mama would die if she saw me here." Teeny motioned to the boy. "Tibbet, you and that dog of yourn go with him and show them the way. But you stay out of that water, you hear? Gators get you." Teeny wiped the sweat from her face. "Yes, Teeny," Polly replied with resignation. She grabbed one of the buckets. "Leave everything with Cato. If he ain't dead yet, he's so old he couldn't cut hot butter with a knife." She laughed at her own joke. "And don't be all day down there. Y'all got work to do back here." Polly gritted her teeth, slowly repeated everything Teeny had said to Amari, even though she figured the girl had already understood most of it, and headed out of the kitchen and down to the river. As they were walking down the path, Polly heard Teeny call out one final warning. "Y'all be careful of snakes now." Tibbet laughed, dropped to the ground, and pretended to slither like a snake. Hush Puppy, always ready for a new game, cavorted around Tibbet, barking wildly. "Get up, silly boy," Polly said, her grim mood fading. "Hill Mama will get us if you get any dirtier." The boy got up, but he darted along the path like a little insect, picking up bugs and rocks along the road and tossing sticks for Hush Puppy to chase. "I hate the heat of late summer," Polly remarked, her hair sticking to her face in the humidity. Amari didn't respond, but she seemed to be enjoying the warmth of the sunshine. Polly had never been this far from the big house. She had heard of the rice fields, but she stood amazed at what she saw. 24 black men and women, knee-deep in thick mud, bent over the delicate-looking rice plants. There was no shade anywhere, and Polly could see thick rivulets of sweat running down their faces. They moved slowly, joylessly. "How can people live like this?" Polly thought. "What y'all want?" a wrinkled, skinny slave sitting on the bank of the river asked. His hair, what was left of it, dotted his head like tiny clouds. "Hey, Tibbet, how be the little man and his dog?" Tibbet bounded over to the old man and gave him a big hug. "Hey, Cato." Teeny sent corn pone and water for the rice workers," Polly told him. "Hopes they get to eat them before the bugs do," he cackled, then almost choked in a spasm of coughing. "So how be for the new denture gal?" he asked Polly when he caught his breath. "That sunshine color hair of yourn gonna get you out of your denture right quick," he predicted. "All you need is a lonely little white boy." He laughed at his own comments, then coughed even harder. Polly touched her hair, but did not answer him directly. Amari asked him, "You work hard today, Cato?" Polly had learned that Cato, the oldest slave on the plantation, always seemed to know everything that went on while managing to do very little work at all. "Oh, they ain't got much choice but to let me do pretty much what I wants to nowadays, since they done about worked me dry," he said, chuckling. "Right now I'm working at watching this here grass grow." He laughed and coughed deeply. Cato looked up at Polly then. "You two still working in the kitchen?" he asked. Polly nodded. "Not for long, child. You's a white girl. Soon they're going to have you sewing for Miss Isabel." Polly thrilled at the possibility. "But Miss Africa, here going to be down here in the swamps with us soon as Master Clay get tired of her." Amari let out a soft moan. "How do you know this?" Polly asked. "Hey, I ain't the oldest slave on the place for nothing. I hears things and sees things." "Maybe it is too soon for her," Polly said, frowning. Amari looked at Polly, a look of surprise on her face. "You don't have to convince old Cato. I'm just telling you what I knows. Master love to see the Africans working the rice." "You ever hear tell of anybody going back to Africa?" Tibbet asked. Cato replied seriously. "Nah, little one. Don't nobody go back to Africa. When they put you in the rice fields, you'll be dead in 5 years, so don't no matter no how." 5 years? Why?" Polly asked, sounding genuinely shocked. "Let me explain," Cato replied. "I spent 18 years out there. Some kind of record that tells me. Every day the rice hands be exposed to the burning sun. Sometimes it seems like the very air we be breathing is hotter than human blood. Then there's the malaria and the pneumonia and the snakes, plus the mosquitoes and the flies and their maggots, all joining us to keep us company while we sweat. Pregnant women be having stillbirths, and the babies that end up being born die young, like they sickly or something. That's why Master keep a bringing in new Africans. They knows the rice and they strong." Amari inhaled deeply and looked at Cato, her eyes wide. "Hey, boy," Cato called to Tibbet as he heard the dog bark with alarm. "Get away from that water. You want a gator to eat you?" "Gator can't catch me," Tibbet replied, but he ran back up on the grass. You know how rice be planted?" Cato asked the girls as he continued. They shook their heads. "One seed at a time." "But the rice be so small," Amari remarked. "Yep, that it is. You makes a hole in the mud with your toe. You drops the one tiny little rice seed in the hole. Then you closes the hole with the heel of your foot. Toe plant heel, all day long, bending over, knee deep in swamp water." Cato coughed once more and looked down at the ground. "And that's just the first part. Then you got to tend to the plants and flood the fields and cut the stacks and thresh the seeds. Seem like it go on forever. That's what be in your future, Miss Africa. And when you get old enough, this here boy's future too." Polly looked at Cato in disbelief. They put Tibbet out there?" she asked, horrified. The thought of little Tibbet sweating and working in the dangerous swampy water made Polly feel ill. Amari put her hand to her mouth, barely holding back a sob. "What to do?" she finally asked. Cato shrugged. "It might help if Miss Isabel like it, but she ain't got no say-so over much around here. I suppose you got to keep on making yourself useful in Master Clay's bedroom. That'd be all any slave woman can do," Cato explained sadly, "lest she run away." At that moment they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from one of the slaves in the rice field. Cato moved astonishingly quickly for an old man, and he hurried down to see what happened. Polly, Amari, and Tibbet followed. Oh, my Lord, Copperhead!" a slave named Jacob cried hoarsely. "My Hilly been snake bit!" Polly watched, horrified, as Jacob emerged from the swampy mud, carrying Hildy's limp body to the shore. He laid her gently on the grass. Polly could barely see the 2 small wounds on her leg. There was very little blood. Some of the slave women quickly daubed her leg with mud and wrapped it tightly with strips of cloth ripped from her own dresses. The woman's eyelids fluttered. She called for her husband, then she arched her back and was still. "She be dead?" Amari asked, her voice barely a whisper. Tibbet, for once, was still and quiet. "Oh, not yet," Cato replied quietly. "Just passed out, but the poison likely to kill her by sunset. Copperhead don't play." Cato looked directly at Amari as he spoke again. "2 dead of snake bite this season. 2 more died of malaria. 1 gator bite. 1 drowned. Do whatever you can to stay out of this place, gal. You hear?" Amari looked terrified, Polly thought, and rightfully so. As they left the rice fields, Polly could hear the workers being called back to work. No free time just because of a little snake bite. So we end this, we get introduced to Cato, and we get to introduce to like the real horror of the plantation, which was the rice fields. That was the work that the slaves actually had to do, and as Cato explained, it was real back-breaking work. One thing to remember, this was before America was the United States, so a lot of places, a lot of the land wasn't cultivated all the way, so a lot of it was swampland, which is where the farms are at there in the Carolinas. Swampland, full of water, full of bugs, full of mosquitoes, and also full of snakes and gators. So down south, there's still a lot of copperhead snakes and things going around, especially in rivers and wooded areas. And that was the danger because the slaves worked in that. And that's why they kept bringing more in, because it was very likely that they would die in the rice fields working. They didn't get breaks, like not for real. So it's very likely that they would die under this backbreaking work in the summertime and all these other terrible, horrible conditions that the slave masters didn't care about. So here we go. We're finishing up chapter 20. Thanks for listening with us. We'll see you on the next one.